welcome back. In today's video, we will be discussing the number 1 in metaphysics.
Yes.
Alright, Sterling.
Okay, well, again, because I have a metaphysical background, you have a mathematical background, okay? You're going to have more input in this than probably I'm going to. So first, let's start talking about mathematics as far as 1 is concerned. So let's go.
Alright, so 1 is what is known as the multiplicative identity.
Okay,
And that simply means that you can take any number and multiply it by 1 and you get the exact same number.
okay. And that gives us what? What does that give to numbers?
That establishes the magnitude of a number.
Okay,
And that metaphysically that would come from 1's function as unity, as the single unit.
okay,
And that you can think of this as any number can be thought of as groupings of single individual units.
okay,
So say number is a combination of 2 single individual units. 3 is 3 individual units grouped together,
and so on.
and so on.
Okay. All right, and that gives magnitude to the number itself.
That gives magnitude to the numbers themselves.
Okay. And magnitude being, what does it give?
Magnitude essentially breaks down one-dimensionally as mass.
Okay, so it's giving it mass.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And magnitude actually measures mass, correct?
It is.
It's a way to measure it.
It is a measure. Yeah.
Okay, so it gives us a way to measure the mass,
Mhm.
essentially. Okay, so it's a measurement, which is kind of interesting when you're thinking about an equation.
Yes.
Numbers
Yeah.
in an equation. That's interesting. Okay, so what else does 1 do? Let's talk about 1 in one-dimensional reality. 1 in one-dimensional reality is
1 in one-dimensional reality. Any way that any operation you can do with it, reflection, refraction, anything in one-dimensional reality is a reflection onto itself.
okay. So it's a reflection onto itself. One thing.
It is one thing,
Okay.
and that's
And it's just reflecting itself back
Yeah.
and forth.
Yes.
That's all it can do.
That's all I can do.
Okay. Okay. And then when we move into two-dimensional reality,
In two-dimensional reality, that the reflection is interesting because it actually generates polarities.
okay,
And the way to think about this is where positive and negative numbers come from.
okay,
So you take in two-dimensional reality, you take 1 and you reflect it, you're going to have the mirror image of itself, and it's negative.
okay. All right. Okay. And with 0,
With 0 being the median at that point.
okay, interesting. So 0 creates the medium, but
Is
so
it
axis is
zero-
what's between it.
0 is the median. It's what's between it. 0 is essentially the mirror. It is what's doing the reflecting, the reflective surface.
Okay. Interesting. So absence is the reflective surface. That's interesting. Okay.
Which is it's absolutely intriguing because in the 3 dimensions, that's also what generates the refraction.
Right. Exactly. The surface. It refracts out the surface into the 3 parts of charge, which is, well, we'll get into that later. But okay, still talking about 1 though. It creates polarities. Okay,
Yes.
in two-dimensional reality. So it's the creator for archetypes, for oppositions, for again polarity.
For polarity, anything with a polarity.
Right.
Is talking in physics. You got your magnetic dipoles.
Right. It
Creates
creates all of that.
all of that. Yeah.
So that's 1, and that's 1's creation.
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, it creates positive and negative at that point.
Yes.
Okay. And the third one's the medium that it's reflecting off of. So it doesn't have much. The third one has no interplay except causing that.
Right.
Essentially. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So as far as 1 in 3-dimensional reality. Okay.
In 3-dimensional reality, at that point, we branch off and we get a refraction in addition to the reflection.
Okay.
So, in that instance, not only does it create changes in polarity, but it also creates changes in direction.
Okay.
So it establishes the 3 fundamental charges in matter.
Okay.
You know, your negative charge, your positive charge, and the absence of charge.
Okay. So the proton, electron, and neutron essentially
Yes.
is what.
Yep.
Okay. It establishes
It establishes the foundation for the existence of reality around us.
Okay. Okay. And that would be the refraction of the
It is, yeah.
surface.
Mhm.
And then zero takes on its own part in that because it becomes the neutron
Yes.
off the
So
surface.
zero becomes
So in three-dimensional reality, zero is not actually the surface anymore.
no. That's
Interesting.
it's one of the properties that zero does have in two-dimensional reality, but in three it takes on its own form,
Right. The neutron.
which is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Where one does actually give form to zero in three-dimensional reality.
Yeah. Yes. So it gives it its own magnitude essentially.
Yeah.
So it goes
Yes.
back to magnitude.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And of course, giving magnitude to all the other numbers pretty much is how numbers exist in an actual equation. Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would that provides the basis for the existence of numbers in the world, and then how we're able to work with them, how we're able to utilize them in expression to explain any number of phenomena that we see.
Okay. Now we said that one gives magnitude.
Yes.
Okay. To numbers. What does it do to fractions? Because you can 1 times 1/4 is
1/4.
1/4, so it
Yes.
gives magnitude to fractions, correct?
It does maintain the magnitude.
So that would that be what allows us to actually utilize it in a practical way within an equation? Because it gives magnitude, therefore it allows us to utilize it other than just being a part of infinity, because we know that there's an infinite number of fractions that lay between every whole number. Is one
Right.
the actual reason that we're able to use fractions and decimals in equations?
It is the actual reason that it can make logical sense to our minds.
Right, that's what I mean.
It
Because it gives
Because
it magnitude.
it gives magnitude, but it gives a specific organized magnitude.
Right,
So it's finite and closed.
right. It's finite and closed. That's why you can do 4/4 equals a whole
Right.
number, essentially.
Mhm.
Whereas fractions without that would just keep going on forever.
Oh, we'd have
they wouldn't be
mathematical
practical at all.
expressions that we could never solve.
Right, exactly. So that's what it does. That's what it allows.
Yes.
One.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it gives us mass. Okay, or allows us to measure mass because it gives us magnitude.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's start talking about. We talked about refraction. Now we're going to talk about the practical applications of that refraction. Okay. Refraction gives rise to what in astrology we call cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Okay, so personal energy, creative energy, and spiritual energy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and personal being protons, creative being electrons, and then spiritual being neutrons. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
So when we look at it that way, it gives rise to time in 3 dimensions because it gives us a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
2
It's
cycles.
the
Okay, it gives us our the 3-dimensional cyclical nature,
yes.
which is essentially birth, life, and death. I mean, that's essentially what's happening in all these cycles.
Yes.
Whether you want to call that the death for just, a single cell or something, but that's what we're looking at. Okay, so
Right.
it gives rise to time.
Mhm.
Okay, and giving rise to time, so one gives rise to time,
It does absolutely.
essentially. Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yes. So
So we have the foundations. It creates the foundations for reality, physical reality, and time.
right,
Interesting.
exactly.
Interesting.
It allows the elements to split into 3,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So again, we talked cardinal, fixed, mutable. Okay, it gives everything a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay.
Yeah.
And it causes all of our cyclical work, but it also allows us to make blueprints to follow in the same way, because without numbers, whole numbers, we would never be able to track anything.
Oh yes, you would never know where to
So
begin.
one allows us to create any number
any
that
number
comes after it.
any number of technologies, any number of applications that we could possibly ever think of.
Right. But going back a little more simple, it gives us every number.
Yes.
And then it does that by giving magnitude to each individual number that we know of,
Yes.
okay, including zero.
Including zero. Yes.
So it is just as important as zero is in any practical form,
It is.
right?
It is.
And in any equation. So that's that's key, I would think.
Oh, it's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
You know, even historically.
Right. And then there's the interrelationship between the two.
Yes.
Okay, 1 and 0, which is for another video, but that video is going to be unbelievably important. Okay, and then we have to factor in other things. But again, I think that this is giving us a way to start to build, and anybody else out there, a way to start building blueprints and understanding blueprints. And again, this is the beginning of astrology.
Again, you're talking blueprints. It's not just architectural blueprints. It's any kind of blueprint, say
For matter.
For
Any type of matter.
well, any kind of ritual, even prayer, anything that you want to establish.
Right, right. But again, you're manifesting anything
Yes.
in three-dimensional reality. This is it.
Mhm.
This is how it's done. So yeah, okay. No, I think that's unbelievably important to this entire cycle. That it gives rise to this, because that gives rise to, astrology. That's the breakdown of astrology in through the seasons, through the wheel. It's going to give us angles, degrees, everything that is involved in that. And essentially, that's all astrology is a blueprint of energy.
Yeah.
If you look at somebody's natal chart, it's a blueprint of their energy. That's what you're looking at. Okay. And this gives rise to the math behind astrology. So it essentially is giving proof to the science of astrology, which I find fascinating.
It's very interesting.
Definitely.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Definitely, yes. Okay, anything else that you think we need to add to the discussion of one?
I don't think there's anything right now for one.
Okay,
Before we get into the interplay between 1 and 0.
okay. All right.
So,
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, have a wonderful day.
thank you for joining us, and do submit any questions or comments you may have. Thank you.